Welcome to 10-Minute Zuimonki. Dōgen taught, saying, originally every Buddha and every ancestor was an ordinary person. And because they were ordinary people, they surely committed wrongs, and their minds were not always pure. Among them were those who were dull-witted and lacking in understanding. Yet each of them transformed themselves. Following good spiritual friends, relying on instruction, and devoting themselves to practice, every one of them without exception became a Buddha or an ancestor. You should do the same. Do not belittle yourselves because you think you are slow, foolish, or deficient. If not in this very life, then for what moment are you waiting to arouse the mind that seeks enlightenment? If you truly delight in the way and devote yourselves to it, you will certainly attain it. When we think about the great figures of Buddhism, Shakyamuni Buddha, Bodhidharma, Eno, Dōgen himself, it is easy to imagine that they belonged to a different category of human beings. We read their stories, admire their insight, and slowly begin to place them beyond our reach. Without ever saying it aloud, we start to think, of course they became enlightened, they were extraordinary. They had something I don't have. Dōgen refuses to let us think that way. He says something wonderfully simple. Originally, every Buddha and every ancestor was an ordinary person. That sentence overturns one of the biggest obstacles to our practice. The Buddhas were not born as Buddhas. The great Zen masters were not born as Zen masters. They did not arrive in the world already wise, fearless, or free from confusion. They had to begin somewhere, just as we do. In fact, Dōgen goes even further than we might expect. He says that many of those who later became revered teachers were once foolish, confused, and far from perfect. Some lacked understanding, some made mistakes, some struggled just as we do. Why would Dōgen tell us this? Because he knows how the human mind works. We love exceptions. We tell ourselves that remarkable people succeed because they possess something we do not. It is a comforting story because it protects us from disappointment. If enlightenment belongs only to exceptional people, then we never have to test ourselves. We can admire the Buddhas from a safe distance without allowing their lives to challenge our own. But Dōgen takes that comfortable excuse away. He tells us that what separated the Buddhas from everyone else was not that they started differently, but that they kept walking. They found teachers, they listened to the teachings, they practiced. And when they stumbled, they practiced again. There is something truly ordinary about that. We often imagine awakening as one dramatic breakthrough. Yet most of our lives are not dramatic at all. They are made up of ordinary mornings, ordinary work, ordinary conversations, and ordinary disappointments. Dōgen reminds us that the Buddha way is also lived in ordinary moments. It is lived each time we return to the cushion. Each time we notice the mind wandering and come back. Each time we choose patience instead of anger. Each time we begin again after making a mistake. The path is not built out of extraordinary moments. It is built out of ordinary ones, lived with sincerity. This is why comparison can become such a trap. We look at someone who seems calm, disciplined, or deeply experienced, and we imagine that they have always been that way. But we almost never see the years behind that person. We do not see the mornings when they didn't want to get out of bed. We do not see the countless periods of doubt. We do not see the failures, the discouragement, or the times they wondered whether practice was leading anywhere at all. We only see today's practitioner. Dōgen invites us to remember that every accomplished practitioner has an invisible history. Every teacher was once a beginner. Every Buddha once took a first step. That is why a good teacher is so important. Not because a teacher can hand us awakening, but because they remind us, especially when we have doubts about ourselves, that the path is still open. Sometimes the greatest gift a teacher offers is not an answer to our questions, but confidence in the practice itself. They encourage us to trust the process before we can see where it leads. Near the end of this passage, Dōgen says something that deserves careful attention. He says that if you truly delight in the way, you will certainly attain it. He doesn't say if you are gifted. He doesn't say if you master Buddhist philosophy. He doesn't even say if you never make mistakes. He speaks about delight. Practice cannot survive on determination alone. Willpower fades. Enthusiasm comes and goes. What keeps someone returning year after year is that little by little they begin to love the way itself. Not because every meditation is peaceful, and not because every day feels meaningful, but because practice gradually becomes less like a task and more like coming home. We begin to recognize that this way of living, even with all its challenges, is worth returning to. Perhaps that is Dōgen's greatest encouragement. He does not promise that practice will be easy, or that we will never become discouraged. He simply reminds us that the people we now call Buddhas once stood exactly where we stand today. They were not born different from us. They simply refused to stop practicing. The distance between an ordinary person and a Buddha is not crossed in a single leap. It is crossed one sincere step at a time. And that first step is always available, right here in this very moment. Thank you for listening. Until next time.